a red flag flying here.
Hello and welcome to Socialist Think Tank. Today we're here with Chardine Taylor-Stone. How are you, Chardine?
I'm good, thank you. It's good to see you.
Yeah, it's great to see you as well, and thank you so much for coming on. I'm going to go straight into the first question, which is, what is socialism to you?
What is socialism to me? Well, I mean, for me, socialism is, at its core, is about fairness, and and that everyone should have the opportunity to do as well as they can, with no barriers, with no ladders or anything like that they need to overcome, just to be able to do that. And then also just I mean, fundamentally is just to have a good life, to be able to just go to work and know that you're earning enough money to sustain yourself comfortably, not like on the breadline. We're sort of in a society where it's like everything's just enough, like actually just to be able to do the things that make you happy, and not just all be about work, but have like a work-life balance. So that's what socialism is to me at its core, really. Is that everybody in the world should be able to have that opportunity and have that life.
Yeah, it's great that you've gone straight for fairness and equality there. But like sometimes it gets a little bit misrepresented, doesn't it? Like socialism is trying to take something away from you. Where do you think that comes from?
I mean, I think that's a funny one. I mean, I think that's, we've been programmed so much to think, in terms of like ownership, I own this, and if anybody, encroaches on that, then, they're taking something away from me. But, at its core, it's just about sharing. So, there are enough resources for everyone. There's enough for everybody. What was that joke about, champagne socialists and all of that kind of stuff. But, what people misunderstand about that is that what the joke is about that is that everyone should be able to have champagne. Why is champagne something expensive? Things like that. And I think once people kind of get over the fact it's not about taking from you as an individual, it's about being able to give more to other people who don't have enough. And I think that is at its core what it is. I think that's maybe what's been misrepresented by, the billionaire press and all those kind of people who do have a lot to be taken away. Because we shouldn't be in a world of billionaires, really, at the end of the day. Who needs that money? What are you going to do with it? It's silly when you think about it. It's like you can buy all the planes, you can buy all the gold bars, you can buy all the artwork, and then you've still got tons of money left. I mean, I just think, don't they get bored? Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like it almost sometimes seems a little bit like a game to them, doesn't it? Because when you've got that level of money that you could never possibly spend, and I think people find it difficult to understand how much money they actually have in their store and offshore, because it's just unfathomable. And I'm a maths teacher, and I don't really understand what a billion looks like in real terms. I can do all the maths and everything like that, but it doesn't make sense at a human level.
No. I mean, well, because it's not human money, is it? It's something else. I mean, I've just finished doing, well, my last round of big exams for my law masters that I'm doing at the moment. And I've just done the equity and trusts law, which is really exciting, but what is interesting about it is just seeing how, how much wealth some people have and how they sort of manipulate, our system to not pay tax, to not pay inheritance tax. And so I was just reading about, I think it was 4 years ago, the Duke of Westminster, who passed away, and his son inherited the estate but paid no inheritance tax. And it was like a £6 billion worth estate, because it was all shoved away in trusts and tax havens and stuff like that. And apparently, if they had received the inheritance tax from that, it would have been essentially their entire years, what they collect in an entire year from everybody else, just from that one person. And yet that person paid nothing.
That's the really shocking thing, isn't it? And again, that unfathomable amount of money that people just can't get their heads around. So you mentioned earlier on the billionaire press. So like from that, I'm guessing that you think that maybe that like it's in the billionaire press's interests for us not to have a socialist society, because maybe they'll have some of their unfathomable amounts of money
Yeah,
taken
no,
from them.
totally. And then it's not just like, you know, they're protecting it for lots of different reasons. People fear what they don't know. And also, you know, in our society, particularly in Britain, there's this thing of like, well, if I just sort of hang around with the rich people enough, then eventually that wealth will rub onto me, and it never ever does. But people believe that. So even like the people who work there, you know, the reporters at the Telegraph and the Daily Mail and the Times, they're not earning a lot of money. I mean, I think like the average salary for a journalist is only like what, 25 to 30K at the junior stage. So it's not like they're, you know, at the top end of the pay scale, but they're still invested in that because they think one day I might be the editor, or one day I might be something. And that's a lie we get sold. I mean, if you open up the newspapers, it's all celebrities, or someone got famous because they went on X Factor one day and now, you know, they're a billionaire or whatever. And it's like, you know, these are the exceptions. It's not the rule. And that's what they keep selling to us, and that's, you know, what happened to Jeremy as well. I'm still not over that. Basically, I don't think anyone, every time I think about it, it's like I always knew like the right-wing press were awful in this country, always. But when I look back, and I'm just like, that was actually madness. We were on tour at the time during that election. We were trying to do our bit, you know, getting people to vote, Labour, all that kind of stuff. And so we were listening to the radio for like hours, because you're driving like 6 hours at a time. So you would hear there'd be like an interview, and you'd hear it in real time. So it'd be like Rebecca talking, Jeremy talking. And then we would hear it like a couple of hours later where it was edited. And then we would hear them, you know, do the sort of sound bites or references to that interview, and you would literally hear in real time how it was manipulated from what they said to then how it was presented like 4 hours later on the main news. I've never screamed so much at the radio in my life.
It's awful, isn't it? I remember the same thing, and that final product is all most people heard, because they come back from work and they'd hear this awful thing, like the way it had been manipulated when it was like a 3-second clip out of context, and then it's got all the commentary on there. And I think a lot of the time news is it seems to be opinion rather than like facts a lot of the time with a lot of the press. Is that something you've experienced?
Well,
Like, 'cause
definitely. I mean, I think this is, you know, where we're getting into like these kind of, you know, splits, quote unquote, in society that's driven by media, especially generationally as well, because there's a real marked difference to what I understand is going on, because I see, you know, I see Andrew O'Neill being a twat online. I see Peston being a twat online. Do you know what I mean? You're like, this person is not a nice person. And other people, actresses and actors and presenters, and you're like, these people are awful. And then you go to like your parents or your grandparents, and because they're not in that world, they just, you know, switch on BBC News at whatever time o'clock. And then there, that say Andrew O'Neill seems like a reasonable, sane person. And so they think that's like an authority. You're like, no, this person is an absolute like monster on trolling people, being sarcastic, but they don't see any of that. So it's kind of like I feel like those people know that, you know, a lot of the population isn't using social media, particularly like the people who do vote and stuff like that. So they can say what they want online, but it doesn't really make any difference to the general population or how it's reported to everyone else.
Yeah, I think, like, you know, a lot of the time as well, when you talked about Andrew Neil there, and it's often the opposite of what we're trying to do here. He doesn't seem to want to give anyone any opportunity at all to speak. He'll just like try to force them to say the thing that he wants them to say rather than listening. And I think that's something that we need to do a lot more listening.
Yeah, no, totally. And you know, I mean, it's a tough one as well, because even just the way the media interviews people has changed so much in like 10, 15 years. If you're like a nerd like me and will sit and watch like Question Time, the Prime Minister's Question Time 1997, which I did quite recently. I just wanted to see, I'm just like, because I've been writing, so I'm thinking about like what is the core of like Blairism, and sort of watching all those old election campaigns. And, you know, I was watching something from like way even before like Neil Kinnock was like, he might have been like shadow minister for something or whatever. And it was just when the SDP was starting to split, and they were, you know, going on about militant and blah, blah, blah. But what's really interesting about it is that you actually see that people are giving an opportunity to speak. They get asked hard questions, but this kind of like Paxman, post-Paxman style, where it's like, you know, attacking the person is, I don't know if it's really accountability. I mean, I think we do need to have those hard questions, but then also it's kind of like, it feels like they're purposely just trying to trip up people to make mistakes.
Yeah, they're going for that gotcha moment, aren't they? Rather than a
Basically.
real, like a real answer.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mind if it
Yeah.
happens to Tories, because obviously it's fine. But then, you know, if they're going to, you know, to be fair, if they're going to do it to them, then they're going to do it to us as well. So I'd rather it just didn't happen if that was going to be the case. It's like, you can still hold Boris Johnson accountable without that kind of shouty interview type style, because he's an idiot. So, you know, he's going to fail whatever you do. But I think what happens is that, you know, even for people on the right, they will complain about the same thing, even though they should be held accountable. So I think we need to be careful in terms of just being like, oh, it's okay for us, but it's not for them. Do you know what I mean?
Actually, he might not be as stupid as a lot of people think, because he didn't go on Andrew Neil, did he? He didn't put himself in that situation.
No.
And it didn't seem to backfire on him at all, did it? It backfired on everyone who went on.
Warning. I mean, I think most socialists knew. Anyone who I spoke to who's a socialist was like, okay, yeah, Boris is probably going to be prime minister. But it's mainly like liberals who were a bit like, oh no, he's an idiot, da 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 da. And it's like, yeah, but he was mayor of London. You know, he won that city over, and I remember he was extremely popular with his selfies and, you know, Boris bites and all of that kind of nonsense. So I was a bit like, he's going to just have the exact same kind of performance of his sort of everyman, even though he's not everyman, he's an aristocrat, but like he performs that very well. You know, people think that they can have a pint with him. They see him as like the kind of like the local posh bloke in the village. That's his whole vibe. Whereas, you know, I don't know what Starmer's vibe. Sometimes I just think, is he real? I don't know. Maybe they grew him in a tank somewhere. I'm not entirely sure, to be honest.
Someone I know claimed he was a little bit like Clem Attlee, and I was like, okay, well, how is he like Clem Attlee? And we had this bit of a to and fro for a little while, and it turned out that the reason he thought he was a bit like Clem Attlee was because they're both boring, and it was no qualities in common, just boring. Anyway, I'm going to come back to you as you, and have you always identified as a socialist yourself?
Oh God, yeah, probably since I was about, God, I can't even remember, you know. I think properly, I was like 16, 17. But before that, I was even questioning then. So I remember having a conversation with my mum about, so when Princess Diana died, and I was saying to her, well, how comes, you know, the paper, because mum used to get the Sun or the Mirror, but like, well, how comes this paper was being so horrible to her one minute, and now it's like, boo hoo hoo, she's dead the next minute? And my mum was like, oh, you just don't understand. And I was like, I do understand, because, you know, I even at that age, I got a sense of the kind of unfairness. I was like, well, why are we struggling? Because I grew up in a single parent household. Why are we struggling? Why am I going to having to go to the neighbours and ask for like 20 quid for the electric? And yet some of my friends parents are like living in like 10-bedroom houses and with lawyers and stuff. I was just like, this doesn't seem right. And I also kind of got, even though it was a lie, but like at the time when the Labour government came in, I remember having a sense of, oh, this is for people like me and my mum. This is going to change stuff for us, which it didn't. So I'm still angry about that. But so I think even then I was always sort of thinking about fairness and equality from quite a young age. And, you know, for a while I was like, I wasn't sure where that came from, because, you know, my parents aren't particularly political. I mean, my mum's a nurse, my dad's a firefighter. I thought it might have been my nan, my dad's mum, who's like this sort of Cockney matriarch, or she was this Cockney matriarch. But then we had a whole conversation where she was voting BNP, so that was not the case there. So I don't know what she was on. She didn't like Jeremy either, bless her. Very, very odd. And it was for my my mum's mum, who I went to visit recently. And when I was a kid, because my mum's Trinidadian, when I was a kid, she was quite strict. And I was just like, oh God, this is just like a nightmare. But now, obviously, I have a different relationship with her now. But she used to work at King's Cross Station in the ticket office. And then I was like, oh, so how did you meet Grandad? Oh, my Grandad's they were both, I think my Grandad was the rep, the trade union rep, which I didn't know. And then me and my partner went up there recently, and my nan was talking about how she loves Corbyn. Like, for some reason, I don't know, she was like, oh, we vote Labour in this house, sorry. And I was like, Nan, Granny, you're talking to me. And you're trying, it's like, she doesn't know what I do a lot of the time, bless her. She's like nearly 80. But I was like, okay, maybe I was absorbing something from her, and I didn't realise that, you know, she was, you know, I don't know if she'd call herself a socialist, but just from, you know, she went on strike and all of that kind of stuff. I remember when I was younger. And so I must have absorbed that in some way. And she's quite a sort of very sort of strong West Indian, Trinidadian matriarch. So I'm really interested in, you know, with my family in terms of like coming from Trinidad and the sort of union movement in Trinidad as well. And just the fact that we produced so many Black socialists. Claudia Jones is ours, as I say, Darcus Howe is ours, CLR James is ours. And yeah, so I'm quite proud of that heritage, actually.
That's such a kind of heartwarming story there, and the history of your family. I often think like a lot of people who are in are socialists or trade unionists, the best ones kind of just go, I can't help it. There seems to be something in them that just like they can't help standing up against injustice. Would you find that yourself a lot?
Yeah, no, I was always that person. I was always that person in school. It's like, why am I learning this? You know, it doesn't tell me anything about myself. That sort of thing. So I used to get in trouble a lot for that. But, you know, then that sort of questioning why, or I'm not doing that, is basically what I do and have done with, you know, sort of activist stuff. And hopefully now, you know, once I actually finally qualify as a lawyer, I'll be able to do that professionally. It should be quite fun. Or maybe it won't, I don't know yet.
I'm sure you'll make a massive difference when you do as well, because you know, I'm convinced of it, because I've heard you speak a few times through the political education project and so on. And you're definitely the sort of person that I would want on my side. So if I had you in my corner in the law, I'd be really pleased. So I'm going to move on now to your work in sort of the music industry, and I think a lot of people think socialists are quite, you know, I don't know, there's this caricature that we're quite dull and quite like, you know what I mean? They'll try and say that we're quite boring and we're not very creative in things. And it's like, I find the opposite of that, you know, like the funnest people I know are socialists, and, you know, the boring, but again, maybe this is a media thing coming
It's
through
funny, isn't
where they don't.
it? I mean, I think it's because we like to talk about politics. So I know people just find that some people are just like, oh God, not that again. So I think people have a very particular relationship to politics, whereas, you know, politics is just about life. Everything is political. Whereas, you know, if you've been, you know, as we've been indoctrinated by society that politics is something to do with, you know, parliamentary politics or, you know, stuff that you don't talk about at the dinner table, it's that sort of attitude. And that's why people think they don't actually do politics, but they do every day. So like, yeah, no, with my music and stuff, so I play in a band, I play in a punk band called Big Joni. It's a black feminist punk band. And yeah, I don't know why people have that stereotype about us actually. I'm like, you know, I'm sort of all for the sort of, you know, the punky rad. That's the only way that I've known socialism anyway, or anyone who's like, you know, been active, who's always been like a really interesting, creative person. I don't know any. Oh, actually, no, that's a lie. I do know some boring socialists, but like, stay away from them. They're off. We all know those people in the meetings. We know who they are. You know, I mean, I think that's maybe the stereotype that people are thinking about. It's a bloke with, you know, with the fist t-shirt on, and I know, and he's got some, what's it called, placards under his arm or something. Always giving you a leaflet is the classic one. You know, but most people aren't like that. Most people are just, you know, regular people, or lots of people just do really interesting, great stuff in their community. You know.
So tell me a little bit about your band then, because like I've been listening quite a bit today. I even managed to listen a little bit during, like as I said, I'm a teacher, so I managed to listen a little bit in the school day, and it met the seal of approval from a few of the students as well. So yeah.
That's what I say. And Big Joni, God, we've been around. Well, we started in 2013. And I met Steph, who's a singer and guitarist, in a black feminist meeting. But I didn't actually speak to her. I just saw that she had a bag that was the Raincoats, which is like a feminist band from the late 70s. And I like the Raincoats. So then I messaged her on Facebook, and she said she wanted to start a band. And so we started playing together. And it was the first band that I'd ever been in. Steph had already been in a band before. So been playing and touring since then. And then Estella joined us a bit later. And we had our album out. God, was it must be 3 years ago now, probably. And yeah, it's a bit of a crazy story. So it's sort of like, I mean, it's like a classic kind of mates getting together, putting a band and just like practicing and just playing loads and loads and loads and loads. And then, you know, we were playing a gig supporting this amazing band called The X. And First in Moore was in the crowd, and he'd come to see us because he'd heard about us and he wanted to come see us. So this is Thurston Moore from Sonic Youth, in case anybody doesn't know. And he was like, hey, afterwards, hey, I really want to put your record out, dude. It's so cool. And I was like, what the hell is happening here? This is insane. And then the next morning we were having breakfast with First and Ava, who run Daydream Library series. And so they put the money together and to put our record out. And have just, you know, really supported us. And now we're working on our second album, which is coming out on Kill Rockstars label. And Kill Rockstars has Bikini Kill, Gossip, Sleater Kinney, so like loads of like legendary feminist punk bands. And yeah, we've just toured all over. We've been in the States, Europe. We supported Gossip on tour. So I've played like some ridiculously massive venues. So I've played Brixton Academy like 4 times now. So supporting Bikini Kill reunion show, which was incredible. Then we were supporting Sleater Kinney there. And then there was somebody else, can't remember, we're playing, we're supporting Idols there next year as well, who are a really band that I really, really love. And yeah, it's just been amazing. You know, you start off doing something, and again, it's that sort of, you know, not waiting for anyone to tell you what to do. It's that sort of punk attitude of just, you know, let's just do it ourselves. We put out our first record ourselves. We saved up all our money ourselves. You know, a lot of the sort of smaller indie labels were a bit like, oh, you know, we don't know how to promote you because you're all like 3 Black women in a band that sounds like L7 or something. So, you know, but we just were like, well, this is what we like and this is what we do, so we'll do it. And now we are where we are today. I think I've got a photo shoot like next week for Idler magazine. They're putting us on the front cover, you know, so it's all a bit mad, and it's quite amazing really. Sometimes, you know, when you're, you know, someone like me just keeps like working, and you never really sort of sit back and take time to like think about all the things that you've achieved. And then sometimes I have to be like, what the hell? Like I was just like hanging out with like my idols, like from when I was younger. So I played drumming standing up. And the reason behind that is, one, because I was really into, I am really into the Velvet Underground. And Jesus and Mary Chain are one of my favourite bands. And Bobby Gillespie used to play standing up for the Mary Chain. So that's why I play standing up. And then he's seen me play like 3 times now, which is like mad. So that kind of like, those kind of circles, that kind of loop of, you know, being a kid in the Midlands watching Jesus and Mary Chain on, you know, MTV, to then actually just, you know, being able to meet that person that you used to watch on the telly, and they think that you're the cool person. That's, you know, pretty amazing.
It is truly amazing. I've loved hearing all that story. I was just, when you said about they didn't know where, like, how to promote 3 Black women, and it's like, well, why in the world would you have a stereotype about how to promote a band? Surely bands are supposed to be original, have their own personalities, and every band would be promoted in their own way, in a way that suits them. You know, so like, obviously, we've just heard the report that there's no systemic racism in the UK. So go the UK. Well done, you've solved racism. So how, like, you know, how does that fit in? How does, like, you know, the idea that 3 Black women couldn't be promoted in it? Like, you know, people wouldn't know how to promote it.
It's a funny one, because this is the way sort of racism works in Britain, because people wouldn't like how it might say that, but then it would be like, oh, you know, we haven't got any money, but then they'd suddenly find money for like 4 white blokes who never actually tour, and then they're suddenly, you know, then they're putting their album out, and you're like, well, hang on, they don't tour, they're sort of a bit of a joke band. Like, yeah, they've got a bit of a following, but like, really going to put like thousands of pounds behind them? So that stuff kept happening to us all the time. So then we were just like, you know what, we're just going to put it out ourselves. So we, you know, recorded it ourselves, and then look what happened, you know, on BBC Radio 6, etc., etc. So this, you know, the audience, we've supported like bands like Parquet Courts, and, you know, their demographic is like a lot of like white blokes who really into like indie and stuff, and they love us, and like, you know, they come and speak to us afterwards, they buy all our merch, you know, we have some like really interesting conversations, and it's just like people. And what's really great is that people actually do listen to music you are making, so they get the references. So we're into Pixies, we're into Breeders, we're into, you know, Throwing Muses and that sort of thing, and they hear that, even though those are like white women, you know, and then they hear, you know, might be a bit of Nina Simone in there or something like that. So people are a lot more open than what the labels actually think they are. So we've actually proven that, do you know what, yeah, we might be 3 Black women in a band, but then, you know, your average white bloke who's into music is still going to dig us anyway, because why wouldn't they? So I think that's something that the industry needs to learn, really, to stop trying to feed audiences things. Let audiences pick what they want to pick, and you'd be really surprised. So I think now, if I look back to not just the 90s, but even as far back as the 80s, if you look at some of the big bands then, I mean, a lot of them weren't all pristine, good looking people. I mean, some of them were just weird, do you know? Some right weirdos, like I'm trying to think, like, I don't know. I wouldn't call them weirdos because they're amazing, but someone like the Commonards, for example, like, what's his name again? Jimmy Somerville's voice is just, it's like an unusual voice, but they found a place for themselves there. And trying to think of somebody else who also, like, so many bands where it's just like Joy Division weren't a bunch of good looking blokes at all. Do you know what I mean? Morrissey's a weirdo, even though he's gone proper weird now. But do you know what I mean? But like the industry then gave more space for people who were just really talented performers and singers, and people accepted that. Whereas now things are very narrow and manufactured in terms of, we need to have 10 people looking and sounding like Ariana Grande, for example. So yeah.
Yeah, one Ariana Grande is enough, really. Like, that's all you need. But it's not the first time Jimmy Somerville's been mentioned,
Oh,
actually. By the
really?
way, Ray Goodspeed, who was one of the inspirations for the film Pride, who's been on before. He mentioned Jimmy Somerville, and he actually went out with Lesbians and Gay Support the Minors and with a bucket. And he was saying about how people couldn't believe that Jimmy Somerville. They were like, "Is that Jimmy Somerville?" And he's like, he's just stood there with a bucket, Lesbians and Gay Support the Minors. So he's a good socialist.
Yeah, I mean, that's partly why I discovered that later about them, actually. One of my favourite songs of theirs is what's it called? Song for a Friend? I can't remember. But like they're literally, in the video they're waving the red flag. I was like, how did I miss this? But I actually live in a housing co-op in Brixton, and one of the guys from Lesbian Gay Support the Minors who lives in my co-op down the road. So there's some quite interesting stories and conversations from him.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it, as well? It's a small world sometimes in socialism.
Yeah, it is,
You'll get to meet each other. So maybe we need more people in so we don't all meet each other. But anyway, it's nice to meet everyone. So are the themes of your band, do you sing are there songs written about socialism, about feminism, about Black feminism?
No, I mean, I think no. So, and I think there's reason for that is because one, Steph's the main lyric songwriter and lyricist, so she just writes stream of consciousness stuff. So when, let's say, we're like a Black feminist punk band, we're not singing about the patriarchy. We're not like Bikini Kill. And I think there's a space for that, but it's just not really for us, our sort of vibe to do that. But I think we are Black feminists in a band. So, everything that we do, like how we sort of make the music, how we work, who we hire to help us as well. So, our amazing producer, Margot Broom, is like this just incredible producer who's a trans woman, one of the, I think she's one of the best producers in the country at the moment, to be honest, and runs Hermitage Studios. So it's like we always try to work with people that is about bringing the less represented into, along with us. So when we go on tour, we always make sure we bring either a band that's women or people of colour or queer people with us. We always split everything evenly, all of that sort of stuff, so we put it in practice in the band.
That's really good to hear, and it's funny, really, isn't it? Because the question I asked, it's like, well, you're Black feminists, but and socialist, but like what, that's not all you are. You have all sorts of different opinions and emotions and life experiences and stuff. So do you find that, like, a lot of people would pigeonhole you and say, oh well, you that's you should only speak on this topic, because this is something that really frustrates us as
Yeah,
well at
yeah,
Socialist Think
totally.
Tank. We get people on to speak about socialism in general, and people are like, oh well, you should have spoken to them about their specialist subject. You're like, well, would you say that about a 60-year-old white bloke, that they had to speak only about 60-year-old white bloke issues?
No, I mean, that can happen. I mean, I have a sort of, you know, a form relationship with it, because obviously, it's really important to me, because, as I've said many a times, Black feminism, its root and its heart is socialism. That they were all socialists, these women that sort of, built this practice. So, people often see it as something separate. People often see radical Black politics as, just about race. But actually, when you look at it as a whole, it is just a branch of the socialist tree, because all those people writing that stuff were Marxists, were socialists, were Leninists, whatever they were doing. So that to me is the sort of message that I try to get out, and it's both ways as well. So it's not just about telling white people that, Audre Lorde was a socialist because she was, or Olive Morris was a communist because she was, and letting those people know about that. It's also about people, Black and people of colour, letting them know that Angela Davis was a Marxist, Black Panthers were socialists, because that often gets erased as well on the other side. So it's sort of, I kind of sit in the middle a bit, and it's like 1 minute I'm sort of going, hang on a second, you need to, if you want to know about, I don't know, sort of globalization, you should be reading Walter Rodney, because that will tell you all you need to know about it. And then what's it called, How Africa Was Colonized, takes Marxist theory and talks about globalization and colonialism. It's a perfect text for that. And then on the other side, it's like going to people, maybe you should actually engage with, the white men writers, because that's who Angela Davis was engaging with. So if you want to understand Angela Davis, you need to go back and you need to read a bit of Marx, or read a bit of whoever, because she wasn't literally quoting those people. So you're not fully going to understand otherwise. So I think that's, what I try to do, really.
So like, would you say personally that you're a Marxist? Because again, it's an insult that's thrown around, being a Marxist, and it's like, didn't he just kind of describe capitalism and why it's a really strange
It's an
thing,
interesting
like,
one, because I mean, if someone asked me what my politics were, I'd say I was a socialist. So, and I don't know if it's getting too academic now, but I had this conversation with my partner the other day, because I wrote an article about, how Black feminists who were lefties, their sort of socialism gets erased by these liberals. And Barbara Smith, who's an amazing, one of the sort of founders of Black feminism, you could say. I sent the article to her, and she was like, "Oh, this is amazing." She said, "But I'm not a Marxist. I say that I call myself a socialist." And I was like, "Oh, let me amend the article." And so we had a conversation about it. And, I think I would say no. I'd say 60%. Mainly because actually a lot of the kind of stuff that really inspires me in terms of, socialism, is how I see it as a practice, doesn't just come from Marx. A lot of it actually comes from lots of different movements. So if anything, I'd say I was more a socialist and trade unionist more than anything. So, stuff like Chartists I find really inspiring. Obviously a lot of sort of trade union movements and stuff, which are all socialist, but not necessarily Marxist. Although I will often refer a lot to Marxist theory, I guess, in terms of if I'm talking about neoliberalism and all of that kind of stuff. But on a day-to-day like practice, I would just say I'm a socialist.
Yeah, and it's funny as well because you've like set out really clearly there and in a really understandable way that this isn't just like, oh, you don't just become a Marxist and there's a framework
Mhm,
there that people can relate back
mhm.
to, and but whereas people will throw that as an insult, and I'm like, if they knew what it was, it's like it's not really an insult. It's like, well, you use Marx's framework to try and
Exactly. It's just
understand
it's
what's
a
going on with capitalism.
exactly, it's a language that we can use as socialists. I mean, you know, when people talk about, you know, if they're sort of a Marxist academic or a Marxist writer, it's like they're really engaging with the theory of Marxism. But I also engage with the sort of just the general kind of social theory of collectivist movements. I mean, one of my favorite places to visit and just learn and, you know, read and pick up things is the People's History Museum in Manchester. Absolutely love that place. That to me is like, if someone asked me what my politics were in a building, I would say it was that place, because it really goes through like how people started to kind of come together, and you know, the sort of very early sort of beginnings of, you know, the sort of traders councils, trade unions, and then it goes through like the sort of socialist clubs, like I can't remember, it was called the Clarion Club or something like that. They used to do like, you know, cycling and all kinds of interesting stuff, coffee houses, all that kind of stuff. So that's the stuff that I really really love.
Yeah, it's like it's funny as well because you obviously you know the theory, you know what's going on, but your definition of socialism at the very beginning was back to
Hmm.
that like kind of community and helping each other, and everyone looking out for each other, which is
Exactly.
seems to be the opposite of what seems like Thatcherism.
Mhm.
That's that's where my socialism comes from as well. Like, so it comes from the opposite of that individualistic, you look after yourself and screw everyone
Mhm.
else in Thatcherism. Is that something that's influenced you as well? Like,
Well, I mean, you know, I'm a child of New Labour, basically. I mean, I was born
mm,
in 1985, so I caught the end of major Thatcherism within sort of living memory, and especially I was in the Midlands as well. So, you know, the town that I grew up in, sort of near just outside Northampton, so it was like shoe factories and stuff, and you know, sort of the way the economy went in terms of like closing sort of manufacturing in Britain, you really saw the devastation there. So it's like you saw it in the north in terms of the mines, but you also saw it in the Midlands in terms of the steelworks in Corby, which was a town next to where I grew up, and in my town as well with the shoe factories as well. So you just have these empty factories that I used to play in. Actually, it was very dangerous to know what I was doing, but like they were just dead spaces, and it was really depressed town, and the only sort of job opportunities and the only things to do would go to the shopping centre, you know, which is sort of such an example of like Thatcherism and consumerism. It's like we'll take things that actually last, like manufacturing, shoemaking, and then we'll just stick a shopping centre there. And then, you know, now the shopping centre is just a bunch of like 99p shops. Nobody's ever there because a newer shopping centre opened up in the next town. So now my town's devastated. And then the town that was devastated in the 80s is where everybody does their shopping. So it's just like, you know, there's no stability there at all. So when you're growing up with that and having to sort of, you know, you have to kind of retrain your mind out of that individualism because it's so embedded in our society. And I was on a really brilliant panel. I think it might have been on it was the politics school, Sunday school actually. I can't remember his name. He was from the States, and he said
was
this
was it
really
Joe? Was it Joe Guinan?
no, he was like a African American trade unionist from
Ah,
America. Can't remember his name. It's really annoying because he was amazing. But he said something like, I don't think us on the left have really reckoned with how much Reaganism, Thatcherism, individualism has affected us on the left as well. And I think somebody else talked about how, even just like the way our communities are structured. So that the base for us on the left, it was very much, the trade union was connected to the factory or the workplace. Everyone lived near the workplace, so all the people on the street probably worked in the same place. So being able to make those connections for striking, for struggle, for community action were quite easy, because you literally just talk to your neighbour. Whereas now, we're all working in different places. I have no idea who my neighbours are, what jobs they do, where they work, how they're getting on at work. So, these are the things that we need to start thinking about, how we build the movement that isn't actually in the way that we saw in the past, because the society structure just doesn't exist in the same way, basically.
I think that Reagan Thatcherite kind of policy as well, what a lot of people don't realize is or don't necessarily think of, is the debt. Everyone's enslaved to debt. So when they made everyone buy the houses, and a lot of people got rich off buying houses, that debt that people feel all the time, and it's been public debt transferred to private debt, and people feel like, well, I've just got to go to work now, I've just got to get rid of this debt. And how many people are not in debt? There must be very few people in the world who, or certainly in the UK, who aren't in debt.
I know. That's the scary thing, isn't it? Because now it's all, there's no council housing. So what options do you have? Is to, try and buy a house, and then you've got this massive mortgage. When I grew up, I grew up in a council house. We had quite a decent one, thank God, because it was built in the 1930s, when they actually made things properly. Actually, like decent windows, not these little letterbox windows that they give people these days. And, we were able to decorate it, we were able to do all the things, as long as we called the council and told them that someone who owned a home could do. And then, I don't know if it's changed now, you were able to pass the council house on to your kids as well if you passed away or anything happened. I think they got rid of that now because of the lack of housing, but there was security there. And, within sort of means, you could, do the house into how you wanted. Whereas now, people were so desperate to get into the housing ladder. I want to buy a house. Everyone wants to buy a Bean house, because all you have is the private sector, and that's it. Basically, you're going into a private landlord, and then if you want any kind of control over your house, just if you want to decorate, put a picture up or whatever, then you either have to buy. That sort of middle thing of having a council house, which used to be seen as an aspirational thing. I think people forget that, they were built in a time when people were moving from slum landlords, and to get a council house was like, oof, that was a step up, and they were a little bit expensive. Their rent was more expensive than the slum landlord housing. So, people saw it as like a step up to having more agency in their lives. And I think, to go back to the beginning of what I said, socialism to me is about people having more agency in their lives to be able to, have a happy life, essentially.
So that kind of links into where I want to go next, which is the bit we always try to finish on, which is hopes for the future. So, how would socialism make things better? Because we complain, we've really articulated a lot of problems here. How would it be better under socialism?
So how do we get there, or what would be better?
Actually, you can take that whichever direction you want. How do we get there is a really good question, because I definitely want to know that one.
We're always talking about how do we get there. After
Or
someone say one more time, go and work in communities, I might pull my hair out. It's like, I
yeah,
know.
well, we'll go for what will it look like when we get there? What will it look like? What will socialism do when we get
What
there?
would it look like? Well, well, I'm not going to say imaginary. What is the world that we're fighting for? For me, I mean, it always hurts saying it. I mean, it's basically everything that was in that Corbyn's manifesto and more. So, decent housing for people, affordable housing, good wages, enough that you can, pay your rent, have money to save, have money to, take your family out on a holiday and, get something nice for yourself. Like just those sort of real small things, which are just good for your well-being and your mental health. Things for the communities to do, places for the kids to go, the youth clubs, the sports centres, the swimming pool, community gardens, sustainability as well, a green economy where we're not killing the planet. All of these things are what a socialist world would look like to me. And also, people being able to have agency of what they want their communities to look like. And people being able to go to university if they want to and it be free, just to have that choice to be able to do that. Oh, you know what, I don't want to do this job anymore. Okay, let me go down to the adult community college and do another course and let me do something else. Just all of those sort of things which people think are, imaginary or impossible, but a lot of the things that I just spoke about did actually exist. They did exist, they were just taken away. So part of the fight is actually just getting back some of the basic things that we actually already had and remembering that we had those things, and then fighting for the bigger things.
So you describe that, and who could possibly argue with that? Yet, it's described as this like monstrous idea where you want to do things, but those things would work, wouldn't they? Because if people have if ordinary people have a little bit more money to spend, is that better for an economy, or is it better like in the hands of a billionaire or in a billionaire's bank account offshore? Like where do people? Why do you think it is that people are so taken in by the media narrative that the outcome is so scary?
I mean, I think there's a few things. I mean, I think, people are starting to forget those things that we had, and so it becomes a fading memory. And also, there's just a lot of miseducation about, like every time they talk about the economy, they talk about it as if it's your savings account and they take money out and they put money back in. And it doesn't work like that at all. And, so people, it's kind of like a weird thing where like the things that used to or should actually drive people to be in community with each other have been twisted so that they do the opposite. So, for example, we're just talking about, the magic money tree or what have you. Oh, we can't afford that. Wouldn't be able to pay for as many nurses, wouldn't be able to pay. It's like, so the thing where people actually are concerned about their society, it becomes twisted into a concern, which is actually a negative concern. Oh, we need to protect our borders because we don't have enough jobs. It's like people do care about the fact that they don't have jobs and, there's massive queue for the healthcare and all of that kind of stuff. And then the media then twists that community concern to make it either a racist one or a xenophobic one or an individualistic one. And I think that's the thing that we struggle with on the left, is that how they've managed to manipulate because I do believe most people care about their neighbours. I don't think everyone's like some sort of extreme Thatcherite. I think we saw a bit of that in the pandemic. And I think, most people are good people. You see people helping old ladies with their shopping and all that kind of stuff, just like day to day. So people do care about society. But, the media and films and all kinds of stuff are sort of twisting us to not be in that way, because that way doesn't make profit for people.
I sometimes worry that people I almost feel sad for people when they are more worried about people coming on a boat made out of Coke bottles, and they
Hmm.
think they see them as a bigger threat than the people who are actually the real
Yeah.
problem at the top. That shows how far how low their bar is, that they think
Hmm.
that these people with nothing, these desperate people with nothing, are a threat to them and their lifestyle. And yet
Hmm.
these people who are destroying their lives, they're untouchable. I almost feel sad,
Well, I
you
mean,
know.
that's the thing. It's like these people are untouchable at the moment, and so that's what makes people feel powerless. And it's just a lot easier to feel powerful with someone who is probably going to be competing with the same resources for you. I mean, it's the sort of scraps from the table mentality, isn't it? They're taking something from me, but it's like, well, why are we all fighting over these tiny little things? Why are we all fighting for what's left of the NHS? You know?
So I think this has been absolutely amazing, by the way. I think I'm going to bring it to a little close now. But you've got a new album coming out, and that sounds
Yeah.
exciting. And will you be getting back to actually playing live shows and things soon?
Do you
Because
know
I'd definitely
what?
like to come and see you.
We've got quite a few lined up, surprisingly. And we seem to be doing a lot in the north. I don't know what's going on up there. Maybe we've got more spaces to do social distancing.
It's just great up here.
Yeah, I used to live in Sheffield for a bit, so
Yeah, we wouldn't
um
consider that north, particularly
no,
north.
well,
We're a lot
I'm not
not
gonna
more north than that, but it's sort of north. We'll let you off with that
I'm
one.
not gonna get I'm not getting involved with the borders, because I already got told off when I said that Sheffield was considered the Midlands once, and my partner's looking at me like, because they're from Yorkshire. So sorry.
We have
All
to
right,
travel
no,
2 hours south to get to Sheffield.
no. But yeah, no. So I think we're playing. We're playing. I don't know if what you in the northeast. I don't
Yeah,
think we're playing anywhere up there yet, as far as I know. I played
come to
Newcastle a
Newcastle or
couple.
Durham.
Oh, do you know what? I
Newcastle or
love
Durham would be ideal.
Newcastle. They've got, what's that? We played a festival there, and who's that band that I really love? That really heavy metal-y band that I love is from Newcastle. We played with them loads. These singers really short, but I'll try and remember. But there's a really amazing club in Newcastle that's by the station. It's like a punk club. You should go there. It's like walking into like CBGBs in the 70s. And we
Which
DJ'd there.
which is it downstairs?
No, you don't go downstairs. No, it's on floor level. So
Right.
if you're looking at the station and it's just to the right of the station,
Mhm.
can't remember what it's called, but it's I know so many cities around this country so well because I've been to them so many times. But yeah, so we should be playing. I don't know if we're playing in the northeast yet, but we are booking shows and stuff. And then when the album, we have to have it done by June, so it should be out maybe in the summer, hopefully. And we're doing loads of festivals and stuff, so you can try and catch us there.
We definitely will. We'll look forward to that. Thank you so much for coming on behalf of Socialist Think Tank. We just want to let you know how much we appreciate you coming on, and keep up the amazing work that you do, and keep
Thank
making
you.
great music. And we'll look forward to you representing us in future legal battles as well. That'll always be good.
Well, if any trade union wants to sponsor me, my bank account is open. So,
Ooh, yeah, we'll make inquiries for you. Thank you so much, and don't
thank
forget
you.
to like, share, and subscribe.
We'll keep the red flag flying here.